To an important CNN exclusive now. CNN is told the National Archives now set to hand over to the Trump special counsel 16 records showing the former president and his top advisors knew the correct declassification process, meaning knew, despite what Trump repeatedly says, that he cannot declassify a presidential record simply by wishing it so or just taking it with him to Mar-a-Lago. A top archives official informed Trump and his legal team that the special counsel Jack Smith will have those documents by next week, May 24th. Our CNN legal analyst, Elliot Williams, and CNN's Evan Perez join me now. The notification was in case you want to run to court and try to file an appeal to block us from doing this. But what is the significance if the special counsel gets these documents? Essentially, and tell me if I'm wrong, communications throughout the process of the National Archives trying to get them back, explaining these are the rules, please follow them.
Right. Not only that, it's communications actually between members of the president's own White House team, essentially people who are close to him. We don't know exactly what the letters say, but according to this letter from the archives that Jamie Gangel obtained, what it describes is a process that the former president knew existed for carrying out declassifications, right? And so what it does is it really kind of goes up against what the former president is saying, which is that there doesn't have to be a process because I am, as a president, I have the ultimate declassification power. And he's right about that in the sense that this has never been tested in court. We don't know where the courts will land on, whether a president can say it's declassified and does he have to wait for the bureaucracy to carry out his wishes, or is it declassified when he says it? It's quite possible that, he may win on some of this. We don't know.
Well, so pause right there one sec. We'll bring the lawyer into the conversation. But first, to that point, let's listen. This is at our CNN town hall with Trump saying, I was president. I can do it.
I had every right to under the Presidential Records Act. You have the Presidential Records Act. I was there, and I took what I took, and it gets declassified.
Number one, he admits he took it.
Yes.
He admits he took it, which is important. But that's what he says. I took what I took, and it gets declassified. If you read the act itself, it says, quote, the United States shall reserve and retain complete ownership, possession, and control of presidential records, and such records shall be administered in accordance with the provisions of this chapter.
He is legally and factually incorrect with the statement he's making there, John. It's a simple fact. Number one, 12:01 p.m. on Inauguration Day, every 4 or 8 years, immediately at that moment, all presidential records immediately become the custody of the National Archives. Not the former president, not his family, not anybody else. It doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump, anybody. It's happened to Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, anybody else. So that's number one. Number two, declassification. Yes, the president has authority. Now, that's sort of pushing back on Evan's point a little bit. Yes, he does, but there's a process for it, right? Like, I can't file my taxes by thinking, oh, I'm just going to file them with the IRS. There's a process whereby you send a letter, you file documents, and so on, and it works the same way. It is a process that has to play out. The president cannot just will it into being, even if that's what he wanted to carry out.
Especially if what the archives is saying here is that if he has acknowledged and practiced this entire process that has existed by his administration, right? So what you can imagine prosecutors are trying to do here is to say, all of these other times you were adhering to this process. So now that you're claiming it doesn't exist, here's all the times that you said it did.
And moreover, before you jump in, just one of the president's lawyers last night, they're clearly aware of these documents, but one of them still on our air last night said this.
Yeah.
If you look at the Constitution, you look at the Presidential Records Act, there is absolutely no basis for saying that bureaucracy rules and that the president doesn't have the authority entrusted in him by the voters to possess and to declassify and to hold on to documents.
Is that for public consumption? Is that because you say it's been untested in courts? A message to Jack Smith, really? You want to test this theory with a former president? What is it?
It's just, that's simply not accurate. Think about every area and signing treaties or issuing executive orders. The president can do that, but there's a process for doing so. It simply just can't exist in one person's head. That's just not the way our country works.
It's simply their best argument, and he knows it. And we'll see how far that gets them in court.
And you believe the documents will be in Jack Smith's hands next week?
Next week, I think.
Next week. All right.
A CNN exclusive now. The National Archives, according to sources, is set to turn over what may be critical evidence. 16 records, some of them showing former President Donald Trump and his top advisors did have knowledge of how to correctly declassify documents when he was president. Trump has long claimed that as president, he could declassify documents by simply removing them from the White House, and he's repeated that claim just last week.
Do you still have any classified documents in your possession?
Are you ready?
Do you?
No, I don't have anything. I have no classified documents. And by the way, they become automatically declassified when I took them.
Not true, according to the law. CNN senior legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed is joining us now. Paula, why is the special counsel interested in these particular records?
Well, these 16 records, Sarah, could shed light on the extent to which the former president was indeed aware of the proper process for declassifying documents. Now, according to this letter from the archives that was exclusively obtained by our colleague Jamie Gangel, the archive says, quote, the 16 records in question all reflect communications involving close presidential advisors, some of them directed to you, Trump, personally concerning whether, why, and how you should declassify certain records. Now here, the former president has cited a constitutional privilege to try to block the special counsel from obtaining these records, but the archives said the special counsel is willing to go to court to establish why these are so critical to his ongoing investigation. We know that among the crimes that he is investigating is whether anyone should be charged with mishandling classified materials. In order to do that, prosecutors would need to establish that they had knowledge that they were transferring materials without the proper authorization. But the former president's attorneys, they have made several different, sometimes conflicting explanations for how this all went down. Just last night, as you know, one of the former president's lawyers told you that he didn't need to go through what he described as a bureaucratic process, that he just had the constitutional right to declassify these documents. They've also said that the former president had a standing order, but over a dozen former officials are not aware of any such order. So the open question is, if he did declassify them, how did he go about doing that? That's going to be a question that's really going to have to be settled by the courts, because it's really never been tested, the extent of this very broad power to declassify. But this comes amid a flurry of activity by the special counsel. And at this point, Sarah, we do not know when he will submit his final report.